and if you guys can, one of you guys can record on your end too, it'd be great, just in case.
Yep.
And so for those of you that are, any of you that are new members, welcome to Facebook Ads University. Welcome to the group. We do these calls every 2 weeks. If you haven't come into the group, make sure and get into the Facebook group and say hi, and get in there and ask a question. Don't feel like, if a lot of people are worried sometimes to ask a question because they think it might be, is this a dumb question, or should I already know this? Odds are, if you ask a question and you feel like it's something that you should already know, or it's like a quote unquote not a good question, odds are somebody else in the group was wanting to ask that same question but didn't. So if you do, it's probably making somebody else happy. And so this stuff is really, really, it can get really technical. And so I just want you to really feel good about asking, as many questions as you can. Once in a while, there's going to be questions that might stump us. It doesn't mean we have the answer to every single question. We wish we did, right? So
You do.
right, exactly. Just might not be right. So
Exactly.
no, I mean, nobody knows it all, right? I mean, just like the call we had last week with Arjun, there was a few things that we were pushing back on, talking about kind of best practices with Facebook. And so some of the targeting stuff that we'll actually touch on today, that he had recommended, and some things that really helped us. And there's also some things that we found that in the real world that aren't quite that way. It just depends on each situation. But the one thing is I guess, Ralph, and I can let you touch on this too, because you've been in there and banging your head against the wall probably a lot over the last week. Those of you that have seen increases in cost, especially, cost per click, which directly relates to all your other increases as far as conversion costs. It's the most expensive week of the year on Facebook. Historically, we were warned about it ahead of time too. Of course, those of you that are selling e-commerce types of products, it's also one of the best weeks of the year, right, for selling products. But it's the most expensive week. So hopefully things are starting to calm down as we head into this week. What have you kind of seen the last day or so? Yesterday was Cyber Monday, but you want to touch on that just a bit, Ralph, for people out there just kind of maybe wondering or stressed out or like,
Yeah. Can you hear me all right?
No, actually, you're coming in quiet.
Hmm. Something went. How about now?
Yeah,
Is that
that's
better?
better.
Yeah, something went wacky with the microphone here. Um, yeah, it's been an interesting week. I think in the more competitive niches, it seems like if you're going after leads or registrations or just something other than a sale or maybe like a low-priced offer, it just seems to me that this past week has been incredibly challenging. I sort of joked that we took time off. We really didn't take a whole lot of time off over the weekend because,
Yeah.
although Thursday, Friday, I did chill out a little bit. But I think the competition for that newsfeed real estate was off the charts this past week, and even into yesterday, unless you had a super good converting offer. So something that was probably in the mid-range for like relevancy scores, and we can even maybe touch on some of the stuff that we talked about with Arjun last week, because I think this definitely relates to some of the things we're going to be talking about here today.
Yeah,
Is
definitely.
the Facebook bid factors. Like if you don't have good engagement, expected clicks, good conversion rate, expected positive feedback, just sort of this crazy algorithm that we all kind of refer to as the algorithm, but really what it comes down to is the FB bid, which is complicated. I still don't completely understand it, but if you don't have really good relevance scores and a really good ad that resonates with your audience, you might have had a real challenge getting impressions, and you might have had a real challenge getting leads at your normal cost. And that's basically because, this is an auction. It's an auction, for space, for real estate, for the 1, 2, 3 spots in your newsfeed. and most people only scroll maybe a couple of thumb scrolls. So the prime real estate is that top spot, and to get that top spot, you had a lot of, what we were calling, uh, Black Friday idiots out there just overbidding and just bidding out the marketplace, so that it was really challenging to get low quality or low cost impressions, or low cost clicks rather, and quality impressions, unless you had an offer that really resonated. So, I mean, on sort of both ends of the coin, I mean, we struggled with a lot of clients this past week, but a few of them we actually really did well. So I think it was directly in relation to the fact that the marketplace was just that much more competitive, with lots of people just entering in. People who have never advertised on Facebook before, all of a sudden crowding your newsfeed and crowding out the space that maybe you're selling your products, or you're going after your market. So it was a challenging week, to say the least. Facebook is definitely not a set it and forget it model, which really kind of stinks. But maybe at some point we'll have some automation to allow it to be that way. So you really do have to stay on your toes. If you took some time off over the weekend, I talked to a couple of people in the group, just this morning, that they weren't keeping their eye on their ads, and all of a sudden their cost per lead just skyrocketed, and they spent more than they wanted to, and all that sort of stuff. So, but it's just part of the week. Hopefully by today things will normalize. We're seeing it normalize a little bit today. But yeah, this is the season. It's the holiday season right now, so heavy advertising, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's just, even if you're not in a niche that you would think would be affected by it, it seems like it's still the costs are still going up. And I remember last year there was a lot of pushback from big brands on Facebook in like January, February, because the costs increased so much over the end of the year in December. So I think that was a combination of Facebook just getting more competitive, right? More advertisers coming to the platform. And then also, it was also a combination of that combined with the holiday season, which a lot of advertisers probably didn't really take into maybe consideration. They're just thinking in general the Facebook costs were coming up, and then they came back down again in January, February. So just realize that it could be this way a bit for the whole holiday season, and then as we head into like the new year, they could come back down again. That's just something to be aware of. More the reason to really dial things in, right, and pay close attention. So what we're going to talk about today is, I think, one of the biggest frustrations and challenges. And we don't have we're not going to sit here and tell you this is the perfect formula. You have to do this. But we're going to tell you, we're just going to give you basically some great kind of options that you can use to really scale out your campaigns, but also just really the more you understand how it works and some of the, I guess, idiosyncrasies with Facebook, I think that's going to really help when you're running campaigns, whether it's a new campaign or you're trying to scale out a winning campaign. One of the biggest challenges that we see is it's one of the biggest complaints that I got, not complaints, but frustrations on a couple surveys that I've done too, is like how come, and we get on a call with somebody, same thing. I'm running a campaign and my cost per lead is great, and then all of a sudden I raise my budget and it doubles. How many times have you heard that, Ralph, or seen that?
Tons.
It's like
I've got something finally that's working, and now I want to, get more of it. How do I do that?
Yeah,
it's challenging. So,
yeah. So
we hear a lot.
So basically, Facebook, there's lots of different factors. A couple of them we don't really know why they do it. Sometimes you feel like it's a pretty damn big audience. Why, if you just increase the budget from, $25 to $50, why does your cost per lead go up so high, or something like that? But the point is that we're going to cover some of this today. But there is some things with Facebook that just are really frustrating. But the more you're aware of them, and the more you try to scale slow, but then have ways to, scale slow fast. Does that make any sense? We're going to kind of show you how to do that today. So it feels like you're scaling slow with Facebook, but you can be doing things to be scaling up a little bit faster than the traditional way of just increasing budget, because that's pretty much what you don't want to do. So We're gonna kind of go through 5 ways, and then we'll just go through we'll kind of talk about examples and just go kind of deep into each one, and then we'll feel free to just shoot your questions. If your question's kind of relevant, excuse me, we'll hit it right then. Otherwise, we'll hit questions at the end. So let's get right into it. Basically, we're going to kind of touch on 6 ways really to scale. One is obviously to increase spend, right? However, this is also the biggest mistake. Ralph, can you touch on this whole increasing spend situation and where you see like the biggest mistakes when you're like doing an account audit, or you're talking with somebody, or just experience that we've had where we've seen stuff go through the roof and we've had a client go, hey, I got it, it's looking good, double the budget, triple the budget.
Right. Yeah, well, that's usually the thing. We usually don't have the luxury of waiting around, but what you really should be doing, ideally, is think of Facebook as, I don't know, maybe the best way to think about it is like, you can't serve them the entire buffet. Like you have to you have to give them like, maybe one plate at a time. So if you've got a campaign, let's say at $10 a day or $5 a day, and all of a sudden it's been running for 3 or 4 days and it's getting a cost per lead that you really like, a lot of people will say, all right, well, I'm at $10 a day, I'll just go up to 100. Now, usually what happens is that kind of ticks off Facebook, because the algorithm, whatever it really is, we're getting a better understanding of what it is, but basically the algorithm, which determines where your spot in the auction actually is, and what kind of quality traffic you actually get. It seems to us, and this is definitely something that occurs over and over and over again, is that if you try to feed Facebook, the entire buffet table instead of like, just one plate of it, it can't digest it. There's just no way it can digest a budget increase from $10 to $100 a day. And usually what will happen is that your cost per lead, or whatever your KPI is, like it's a cost per acquisition or whatever it happens to be, will just balloon that first 24 hours. Now, if you can stand it, you can typically wait this out for like 3 days or so, 3-4 days, but most times people really can't stomach it. And you never really know whether or not it's going to come down. It's kind of like, the stock that you buy that's going lower and lower, like how much lower do you want to go before you actually cut your losses? So after the first day, most people just like bag out and, pause the campaign and say, this stuff doesn't work. What we found is that in most cases that will not work, going from 10 to $100 in a day, but instead just doing it in smaller increments, which requires patience, but it also requires more tending to your ads. So we found that through a lot of testing is that if you've got a campaign that's doing well at $10 a day, you could probably double it to $20 a day, just because the real time, the actual dollars are only $10. But past that, we'll only really increase budget by 50% or so every 3 days. So we allow Facebook to sort of digest that increase in budget, and all things being equal, it should actually work out so that you can scale that campaign a little bit more by doing these smaller increments. I mean, sometimes we'll do like 25%, 50% at the most. When I say all things being equal, if you've got a campaign that's got like really high relevance scores, just great conversion numbers, super high CTR, very low negative feedback, very high positive feedback, you can probably be more aggressive. So because that's basically Facebook telling you, yes, this ad is really doing well. We like what it says. You've got a good message match. You've got a good creative to landing page match. You've got everything sort of going, working on all cylinders here. Will allow you to increase the budget, maybe get a little bit more aggressive. But in most cases, even if we see that, we typically only will increase by about 50%. So, if you guys are all starting, and let's say you've got 10 different campaigns or 10 different ad sets at a $5 a day budget, and let's say half of them aren't really doing all that well, at $5 a day after 3 or 4 days, you can pause those. But then you could probably increase your budgets from $5 to $10. I don't see any reason why you can't do that. But then after that, you got to be a little bit more careful and really monitor stuff within 24, 48 hours. So we'll typically increase it by 50% and then watch and see what happens for 3 days or so. And then if it, the cost per lead or the KPI stays at where it needs to be or even lower, then we'll increase it again, maybe by another 50% after 3 days and kind of move forward from there. So increasing budget is definitely is one of those things that you don't want to get too aggressive with. But having said that, I mean, there's other ways in which you can scale out from a budget standpoint. But I think for most of the folks that are on the call here, I mean, I think that's a good metric to keep in mind. And it's interesting because we sort of figured it out on our own end through the agency, and then we talked with Molly Pittman about it, and she basically said the same thing. So people who do this sort of stuff sort of tend to find the same kinds of trends. So I think it's a safe thing to do. And increasing budget.
So basically, what Ralph's saying is to be safe, try increasing your budget. So let's say your budget is $10 a day. So your budget's $10 a day. Then 50% of that is going to be $5, right? So if you're going to increase budget on $10 a day, you're going to increase to 15, right? So that's going to go up to 15 a day. So what we're saying in this situation is, don't you love how good my handwriting is?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, let's see if I can do that again.
Is that Kyler writing that?
Yeah, actually, Kyler's probably better. That's me left-handed, because I hurt myself and I had to type, right, left-handed. So no, but basically, let's say your budget is $10 per day, okay, per ad set, right? So this is per ad set. Now it's not going to be any better, but it's a little bit better.
That's better.
Now, and we're going to get into steps 2, 3, 4, and 5, and this is where this is going to come into play. So you have to understand this. So some people, like Molly, will say about what 3 days or so, right? Every 3 to 5 days, we might use like 1 to 3 days, 50%. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you would increase to $15 per day in this case. All right. So if you're spending, say, $25 a day, then if you're going to increase up to 50, you don't have to do 50%. You can increase to $30, right? But if you're going to increase 50%, what's that? It's about $12.50, right? Is half of 25. So maybe you increase up to 37 or $38. So your first increase is going to go to let's say 37, and that's going to be 50%. So it's going to go $37 a day, and that would be your increase. And then if you're going to increase 50% on top of that 2 or 3 days later, then what's that? About $18 on top of that, right? So half of 36 is 18. So you're going to go, let's use 37 plus 18 is what? 47, 57, 55. So you're going to increase, if you're spending 37 a day, then you're going to increase 50%, say a couple days later. That's going to go 50% of 37 is about 18 and a half, right? So we'll just use 18 and we'll round up and we'll go up to 45 or 55 a day. Now we're at 55. Now, this isn't total budget for your campaign. This is per ad set, okay? And how you scale slow fast is by adding more ad sets, which we're going to add here. We're going to talk about in a second. So I just wanted to kind of illustrate that a little bit. So let's talk about number 2. Number 2 is to find new audiences, create more ad sets. Now, basically the way Facebook works is you adjust your targeting, your placement, your bidding, and your budgeting at the ad set level, right? So if you are at a point where you're starting to get good results and you've got an audience that's working, the typically for us, step 1 is to increase spend, but you can only increase so much, right? We just talked about. So if you want to like double your spend, right, or triple your spend, how are you going to do that? Well, you're going to increase one ad set by 50%, add another ad set to it. Now you just doubled a little bit more than doubled your budget. So obviously you've got to add ad sets that are well targeted, right? And so we can kind of get into the ads manager here in a second here, and I'll show you lots of different ways that you can really get creative with your targeting. And actually, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in there and let me take a look at 1 second here because this might be fairly good timing to do this. let's look at steps 1, 2, 3, look like broad. Yeah, so I think steps 2 and 3 are really together. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go in. Ralph, I'm just going to pull up the targeting so people can kind of see.
Hmm.
Because is that actually if we look at number 3, I'm just going to put them together because these are going to kind of go together. Number 2 is to find new audiences, more ad sets, right? Use audience insights, use the research tool. That's why we talk about continue doing that. Go back to reporting, see which audiences are working, try to find more, right? And the other thing is to use your lookalike audiences plus broad interests. And so these can kind of work hand in hand, and that's why I'm going to kind of go into the ads manager and we will get that out of the way there and pull this up here.
Yeah, 2 and 3 are really kind of the same thing. I mean,
Yep.
you're going after new audiences, but they're separate because they're separate techniques. So
Yep.
yeah.
So let's do this. Let's create an ad. Now I'm gonna go. Maybe I'll just. So let's look at. Actually, yeah, let's go here. Let's just create an ad. All right, so one of the ways is to find new audiences, right? And then also really kind of leverage your lookalike audiences as much as possible, right? So, Ralph, before we hit the lookalike audiences, what do you suggest for some of the best ways to just find new audiences to create more ad sets?
Yeah, well, I mean, the easiest thing to do is, I mean, we always test individual ad sets
Yep.
first for like one interest per ad set. Whether that's the right way to do it or the wrong way to do it, it really sort of depends on what your niche is, but that's how we do it. So what we'll typically do is we'll, take, let's say you do 10 different ad sets or 15 different ad sets, one interest in each. And then whichever ones, maybe there's 5 of them that are really doing well, at your cost per lead, I'll just pull those out and then throw those into Audience Insights. Um, I think which is probably the best tool, but then also there's this suggestions tool, which is in both Power Editor and Ads Manager, which I use that all the time because, I mean, there's some stuff that you just don't think of. But Audience Insights is just a really great way to expand out using, targeting outside of the ones that you're already targeting, but similar to, and that's really the key.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say your interest of Frank Kern is doing really well, and you plug that into Audience Insights, and then you'll probably find that, Ryan Dice, digital marketer, a bunch of others, which you can either get through suggestions like Keith was just showing you, but also through here gives you these lists. The first thing we always go to is page likes at the top to show them that, because that's yeah. What we used to do is we would group together maybe categories of stuff, but using those top categories. But what we've really found is that relevance and affinity, those are actually really good indicators. So something like Frank Kern, for example, that is actually true. Like Tony Robbins is a very good interest for an interest of Frank Kern. So that would be almost like a brand new ad set unto itself. So I would probably pull that one out, put that in a brand new ad set. I might get a little bit more aggressive with the budget, and then I would probably use Success Magazine, Kiyosaki, Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy as all individual ad sets and just sort of figure out whether or not those work. Or I might lump them all together. It kind of depends on what I'm feeling like in that particular day or how aggressive we want to get budget-wise. But this tool is Facebook telling you, all right, here's an interest that's working. Here are other interests that probably will work as well. So why not use that tool? Like, that's the best tool there is. in my opinion.
So if you're one of the questions we get a lot too is if should you lump some of these together and should you or should you separate them out? So there's no winning answer for that. Number one, what we found in general, Facebook's algorithm does better with larger audiences, right? In most cases. However, um, there's a lot of reasons why you might separate these out, right? Unless they're like exactly the same. Like if you have Aweber and Mailchimp, right? You might as well keep those in the same ad set because they're pretty much the same. Okay,
Yep.
like Ryan Dice Digital Marketer. Okay, it's the same brand. You would keep those in the same ad set. But if you do want to separate some things out to really figure out like how is Mark Harbert doing compared to Frank Kern? How is Ryan Dice do compared to Life on Fire? A lot of times it can be great to separate these out, and this will actually give you a better kind of. I think it gives you a better foundation for scaling down the road because then you can kind of see. Let's say you do this and you go to see more, and you've got all these different audiences, right? And maybe digital marketer is the brand of Ryan Dice, so maybe you put that one with Ryan Dice just to and some of these um and however if you start to see that there's like the top 4 or 5 interests that are doing best, you can do things like you can combine those into one ad set, and then see how Facebook does when there's 7 or 8 of them combined into one. And it's a larger kind of audience, right? And Facebook has more time to do its thing. Now, we're one of the important things to really realize about scaling, which Ralph kind of really hit on a second ago, is to be careful with increasing your budget too much. So adding more ad sets, right? And this is one way to really add more ad sets. And it's also a great way to discover which audiences and how well they're doing, right? Now, the next level is really to take this stuff here and to take this stuff over here. And let's put in Infusionsoft. If I put in Infusionsoft here, I've got like some all over the board, right? Software. And you might see some of these if you're in the business to business niche that might be really good. Eye contact might be great, but you might be a little bit nervous about Silverpop. Maybe you have one that's too much of an enterprise level platform. Okay. Or maybe you're selling to mass consumer, right? And you're targeting and you search, your audience shops at Nordstrom. And let's put Nordstrom here, but you're a little bit nervous that some of these brands are a little bit too big, right? But there's some of these that look like they could be really good, but you don't know. And Macy's, is that too broad or would it be perfect? And this is where you can really start to leverage your lookalike audiences, right? So let's say that I want to, because I think one of the great ways to really scale out is to really leverage Facebook's lookalike audiences. I think that's it's to continually, you add more ad sets and really just continually find out what these interests are doing, how they're doing, using Facebook's reporting, but really leveraging your lookalike audiences. So let's spend a little time on lookalike audiences and show you some what you can do. Okay. The first thing you can do, and on a webinar I did yesterday, I'm going to put the recording in the members area. I talked about a top 5 things to do if you're new, kind of a super simple way to start. And one of those is to target a lookalike audience, right? You're a 1% lookalike audience based on your contacts. So I might target, in my case, let's see here, all contacts US, right there. Let's see here, where's it at? Am I missing that? Right there. Okay. So this is going to be lookalike all contacts 1%. Type in the question box if you don't know what a 1% lookalike audience means. Okay. If not, I'm going to definitely recommend that you watch the recording that I'll upload later on within a day or so into the members area, where I really went deep into lookalike audiences and definitions of custom audiences, lookalike audiences. But basically, Yeah, Zach's great question, Zach. That's a really common actually. The question is what if you only have success with custom audiences and there aren't really many interests to target? How would you scale to new audiences in that situation? Well, honestly, that's where I would really start leveraging lookalike audiences in a massive way. So what we recommend doing is starting out, take your biggest list, your biggest whatever it is. So let's say it's your all contacts list. Let's say you have 10,000 contacts. Let's say you have 5,000 contacts and you have 500 customers. What I recommend doing is creating a lookalike audience based off all contacts that you're in your database, and then another lookalike audience based off of your customers. Okay, whichever your largest list is. So if you have 5,000 of subscribers and you have 500 customers, odds are that 5,000 person all contacts lookalike audience is going to be the best audience. Okay, and what I let me show you in case you're a little bit confused on that. So if you go to lookalike audiences here, what you can do with Facebook is you can choose a custom audience, a conversion tracking pixel, or a Facebook page, and Facebook will find new people that are similar to your audience, right? So if I put all contacts, right, right here, and then I do United States, and if I'm at 1% here, the estimated reach is 1.9 million. So what this means is there's 1.9 million people. 1% of the total US Facebook users is 1.9 million. 2% of total US Facebook users is 3.9 million. That's what this is. This is just 1% of all Facebook users. But they have similar interests, behaviors, shopping habits, stuff like that as my contacts. Okay, so where you can really start to leverage things is where you start to use the 1% and the 2% together. And then you can start to do some other stuff down here too, which we'll talk about. But basically, what Facebook has done is they've created a new lookalike audience based on similar likes, interests, and behaviors. And the larger this audience is here, the list that you upload, or the website visitors that you use, or Facebook fans, the better it is. So just because you have a customer list and you're thinking, well, our customers, I want people that look like my customers or similar. If that customer list is way, way smaller than your overall all contact list, you might be better off using the all contacts. But you're going to want to create both either way. Okay, so if you go back into this ads manager here, first thing you're going to do is you're going to just target your 1% and just use that as an ad set, period. No interest targeting at all. Okay, you're just going to use that as an ad set and you're going to set up your demographics like you normally would, right? Whatever they are. Maybe it's 35 to 65, females only. I don't know. But the point is you're going to set your demographics how they will, and then you're going to use your lookalike audience. Okay, now if you're going international, you need to make sure you create this 1% lookalike for each country, because Facebook will only let you create one country at a time. So when we go in here, see over here, I created a new lookalike audience. I created a 1% for each country, each main English speaking, New Zealand, Australia, I think that's Germany, Canada, US. Okay, actually that's New Zealand. Wait, that's Germany. Sorry, Great Britain maybe. Great Britain, UK. Sorry. Okay, so type in UK and then GB. That's Thanks, Richard. So basically, this is one way to start, right? But a lot of you probably might already be doing that. So the next thing that we do, let's say this lookalike audience right here, this 1% lookalike audience on its own is doing well, right? It's like, okay, cool, it's doing well. I'm going down to, let's go 35 to 57 years old, all, and now I've got 1.2 million people, and I've got a decent cost per lead, and I'm thinking, okay, now what can I do now? Well, the next thing to do is what I would do is I would do this, lookalike. You're gonna go. It's Australia. We need to find the U.S. 2%. So we're gonna go. Now what I want to do is I just put in the all contacts 2%, all contacts 1%, right? And now look, my audience it just basically doubled. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to exclude this audience. So now what we're doing is we're targeting the 2% audience, excluding the 1%. So minus the 1%. Now the audience size is about 1.1 million people. It's about the same size, right, as it was a second ago. So what are we doing there? What we're doing here is when I create this audience here, this is 3.9 million people. Now, if I just target this audience only, what I'm doing is I'm actually overlapping, right? If I'm just targeting the 2% and I don't have that excluded, I'm basically have one audience that's got the 1% and the 2% in it, and then another ad set that's got the 1% in it. And Facebook doesn't really like you doing that, actually. And there can be some issues with frequency and stuff. So what we recommend doing is if you're going to target your 2%, make sure you exclude your 1%. So you're going to exclude the 1%. So this is one simple way to scale, right? So we're going to exclude the 1%. Boom. Now, each one of these is going to be a new ad set. So this is a separate ad set as the 1%. Now, if I wanted to, if this was still doing well, I could actually target my lookalike 3%, and I would exclude the 2% and exclude the 1%. Odds are, unless you're in a little bit more of a mass consumer type of product, that's probably going to, my guess is it's going to be probably too broad of an audience unless you're in a mass consumer type of thing. Or you're in another country, like besides the US, where it's a little bit more or smaller, or if it's more geo-targeted, like you're in a specific state. A lot of times you can go really big there. A lot of times you can hardly have any targeting when you're in a geo-targeted area. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to scale using these kind of strategies. But so this is one way to just use lookalikes on their own. Okay. The next way that you can use a lookalike audience is to do something that we call layering. So let's take out the 2% and let's make the 1% included. We're not going to exclude that anymore. So let's keep the audience the same. So let's say now we're back over here, right? And we're looking at some of these audiences and we're like, we've already tapped through all these and we're starting to look for some more audiences. Maybe we are in, let's pick another niche, something that's more broad. Maybe we're targeting, we're selling makeup or something like that, right? And we look up Nordstrom. And we see some of these, right? We see some of these that these categories, or maybe we see like Whole Foods. Maybe we know our audience is, they shop at Nordstrom, they shop at Neiman Marcus, they shop at Saks Fifth Avenue. But we also know that Whole Foods, maybe Whole Foods could be a good audience. Maybe it's too broad. We don't know. You might take a couple of these real big broad audiences and then what you would do is you might go, let's go down in here and target Whole Foods. Let's see, that's 370,000. So what we're doing is, so let's say you're selling makeup, to kind of high-end makeup, right? But you're trying to go wider. So yeah, Whole Foods, you've already tapped into all the different, the high-end makeup brands and the department stores that are high-end, right? But now you're trying to go a little bit wider. You're trying to scale. So you're like, okay, wait, people that have money, maybe that they take care of themselves, they probably eat healthy too. So it's a little bit of like a right angle market. So let's look at some of these nicer type of grocery stores, right? Let's see here. Maybe we're looking at organic foods, organic farming. These are going to be really big. These are probably going to be too broad, right? Maybe we're looking for somebody. Thrive Market is another kind of progressive, high end. They deliver. You can order foods online. So let's target these two here. We got 5.5 million, but maybe what we're thinking is this. We don't want to risk these too much. We know they're going to be too broad. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our lookalike and we're going to layer that. So we're going to only, now in my case, this isn't going to work very well, right? Because I have kind of business to business niche. If I was using a different account, we would have a better match up here, but let's just use mine anyways. And let's do the US 1%. All customers. 1%. Okay. So it dropped it from, what was that, 5.5 million down to about 280,000. So that would
Yep.
be a way that we could say, okay, I want to target these broader audiences, but I only want to target the people that look like my customers and also like this. Okay. But now I'm thinking about this and I'm looking at, wait a second here. Honestly, 280 might be a little bit too small of an audience. So why don't we go a little bit bigger than that? So this is a situation where I might think, you know what, I know my audience. They shop at the nice department stores. Odds are they might shop here too, but I do want to layer that a little bit. But instead of doing the 1%, I might use my 3% or 4% instead of my 1% to give the audience a little bit more size, right? So I've got layering in, but this is where a lot of cases where I think people are missing out on is they're not going with the bigger lookalike audiences with the layering. So here I might use my 3%. So now I've got a 780,000 person audience, okay, and that's a lot better audience. So what we've seen is that trying to get around that 500,000 to a million or even up to 2 million, around that million person point seems to be a pretty good size, doesn't it, Ralph? Um,
Yeah, yeah, it definitely does. It seems like it's the sweet spot, and that's regardless of budget too, for whatever reason. Um, I mean, you just have a whole lot more runway to go when you've got a million plus. I mean, some of our best performing audiences right now are anywhere between 1 million and 2 million, which are all website conversion as their objective. So, I mean, for a local business, that's going to be a little bit more of a challenge.
yeah,
I mean, you're just not going to have that. So, I mean, take that with a grain of salt. I mean, we typically deal with national campaigns. So I think there's a lot of people, inside the Facebook group that have the local experience as well. So I definitely tap into that. Um, but yeah, the wider you can get it, the better, ideally.
cool. Yeah. So basically, um, somebody just asked about a 1%. When was that asked about? Was that asked a while ago? Because I kind of explained it. Hopefully, she got that explanation. Um, but basically, the so this is a great way to find new audiences, but with less risk, if that makes sense. In some cases, you might use a 10% layer because you might find an audience that like it's a little bit more broad than you want, but it's not too bad, right? So like take your US 5% or 1% or whatever country you're talking about and use the larger lookalikes audience just to narrow it down to slightly a little bit more. Um, it's not the first thing you're going to do. The first thing we like to do is really focus on the interests on their own, right? And then maybe the 1% and 2% kind of on their own, and then we start to do some of this overlaying. But the the key thing to remember really is that adding more ad sets and increasing budget slow is like that's the two big things. Wouldn't that be to simplify it, Ralph? How can you add more ad sets and not raise your budgets too fast without
Yeah,
going too
and
broad?
yep, definitely. One of the things that we definitely do a lot now is that I mean, bear in mind, when we're starting out a lot of times just cold. So when we start with a new customer campaign, we might not know exactly what the targeting is. I mean, usually they have a history. So we'll go through, we've got a guy on staff that actually goes through and scours through all the previous interests that did well. So we've got an idea going into it, but then we're going to probably use new creatives and all kinds of different stuff. Usually, the previous agency hasn't done carousel ads or video ads or any of that sort of thing. So we'll go back through and figure out what interests are really good in the client account. But sometimes what we'll do is we'll find the best ones and then lump them together so that you get up to that million, area. So like Frank Kern, Ryan Dice, digital marketer, Eben Pagan, all together. I mean, they're basically the same person who's probably interested in that. There's a lot of overlap. So you could test them all out separately, but usually we'll, in a lot of cases, we will lump them together if we've got some history. So, but one of the big things is that if you don't have history, you don't know what your market is, start one interest, one ad set, but then after you get some conversions going, you can then bunch those together and then create larger audiences with maybe a little bit more budget. So there is definitely different ways in which to scale this stuff out, but I mean, I think just for, simplicity's sake, go slow on your budgets, 50% every 3 days or so, thereabouts. You'll kind of know where that sweet spot is, and then use this tool right here to find other interests. And then if you have lookalikes, add those in as well, because they're really powerful. So I think that's why we do it sort of 1, 2, 3, Keith, because 3 is a little bit more complex. 1
Yeah.
and 2 are fairly straightforward.
Yeah. Yeah. No, good point. And okay, let's hit on 2 and 3, or 3 and 4. Um, and then I'm gonna go ahead and touch, because 3 and 4 are really just as important. So and I'll start with number 4. I'm sorry, 4 and 5 are just as important. So number 4 is to leverage Facebook's reporting tool. And this is kind of what Ralph was just kind of just talking about right there. Is really just to go in, and I guess what are the two most important places to start in the reporting tool? The
Yeah. I would say in the under breakdown.
Yep.
I mean, let me see if I can get a client account up here for a second. Under breakdown is really powerful, because that's where you can figure out whether or not you're getting conversions, where you're getting your conversions, and where you can scale out. And then you can create new ads based upon that placement, whether it's mobile, desktop, right-hand column, or whether it's a certain age or gender. So you've got demographics and you've got placement. So, are your ads doing best in the mobile newsfeed? Are they doing best in the desktop newsfeed? Are they doing best in the right-hand column? Usually that gets the least amount of impressions, unless you're specifically targeting it. But then, the reporting tool can actually show you, ages and gender. If you want to give me the screen, I can show you what I mean.
Okay, cool. And I was just pulling some stuff up too here. I'll give you the screen though. Yeah. Okay. Wait. There we go. All right. Oh wait. Does it work?
Yeah. Hold on here.
And yeah, as we go into this,
There we go.
we got one
What's
more
up?
after this, which is really, really just as important as all of these too.
So, I mean, here's hopefully everybody can see this. Let me just blow it up a little bit so you can see it here. This is a client account where this is one particular acquisition, or basically a sale. They've got 4 different campaigns that we're running traffic to right now, and this is actually one of those ones that's in the consumer market. So it's done well the last week, which is great. So but anyway, so I mean, we spend a fair amount on it, about $1,000 a day just on this product itself. But one of the key metrics for this is really to figure out, like if you go over here, like I've been running this for probably 30 days plus. So if once you have some data, there's some really powerful tools right inside Facebook that you can use to either scale in some ways, but also optimize in other ways. And we talked about this a little bit in the last episode of the podcast. This is kind of an optimization and a scaling technique, kind of both in one, which is actually really, really good. Now we use it all the time. I used it yesterday on a pretty large client account to determine, what country they were actually getting the most conversions. So there's lots of different ways you can slice this, but let me just show you this one. This is actually US only, so I'm not going to be able to show you country. So what I would do is I would just show my reporting all the way to lifetime, so you can see we've been running this. I've got 3 weeks of data probably on this. So but these are the campaigns that I've done, lots of other campaigns, but these are the only campaigns right now that are live. So these are the best performing ones. We probably had about 20 others that didn't do quite as well. So if I wanted to look back and figure out, all right, ever since I've been running all these campaigns, what demographic is the one that's responding best to my message? Or maybe what placement specifically, meaning desktop newsfeed, mobile newsfeed, right-hand column. Which ones of these are actually doing best? Is it male? Is it female? And this little button over here is probably the one that I think I probably use the most, just because it shows you all that stuff in just one little drop down. So this is a male skewed audience. So, but we'll actually show right here, we're targeting males just because it's sort of in a male dominated arena, but we've been surprised that last 3 or 4 days, we've actually been getting more conversions from females because maybe they're the ones that are shopping for their, their husbands or boyfriends or whatever it happens to be. So we're seeing the demographics change a little bit. So we're changing our ads based upon this little button right here on breakdown. So if you're not using breakdown, this is where this is your columns for your performance. So we've gone through that in previous webinars, how to break down, what your cost is, what your conversion cost is, so forth and so on. But then this one over here is breakdown. So hit on age and gender, and you'll see by campaign, this is going to break everything down by age and also gender for conversions. So what I'll usually do is I'll just then, sort by results right here. So you can see this was definitely my best performing ad set. You can see it's LA's lookalike audiences. Okay, that's the marker for that. So you can see really by 65 plus. I'll make the screen a little bit larger so people can see it. So 65 plus is our best cost per lead. Now we want to get our cost per lead for this like under 17. What we ideally want to do is we want to get it at 10. So that's where we make the most money. And the client's really happy. So, but look at this. So most of my conversions, a large portion of them, let's say 1/3, are coming from male 65 and older. And then 55 to 64, maybe not quite as much, at about 134 at 20. That cost per lead is a little bit too high. But then, let's see, over here is female 45 to 54. That's actually sort of emerged in the last couple of days. So you can see by gender and by age which demographics are working best for you. Now, when we were running other ads before this, I figured out that the 65 plus demographic was the best one. So I created, this is an exact example of what we're talking about here. So I got 387 more conversions just by using this data. So I had previous campaigns going in October. We ran this from like mid-October to the end of October. And it was clear that 65 plus males were the ones that were converting best. So I created a brand new ad set. I created brand new creatives, which is brand new ads, and targeted only 65 plus with all the interests that we're doing best. So as you can see, this is probably our best performing ad set right now because, like I said before, our target is about $10, and we're running at about $10 lifetime on this, which is really, really good. So this little button over here, this breakdown, like I said, is super important. One of the other things that we'll sometimes do is just do gender. So you can do age and gender, but you can also just do gender. And you can see on this one, males are still dominating versus females. But you can also change your age range. So like I said, this past weekend, all of a sudden we started to see more females. I don't know if it was this one or it was the other product we're selling, but anyway. So you can see I just changed my age range from November 28th this past weekend, but now we're actually seeing some more, not really that much in this one. We actually got another campaign that's a little bit more female-centric. This one's still pretty much male-dominant. But this interest level, this stuff right here is super powerful. So when you start seeing trends emerge, like this one right here, there's all my ad sets, all the stuff that I'm doing, putting in carousels, all kinds of other sorts of things based upon the fact that I just used that little breakdown button that showed me exactly which was converting best. So really, really powerful. So we'll optimize as well as scale based upon that. So that's sort of a combination of the two. Does that make sense, Keith?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Appreciate it. And that's really, the big thing is just get in there and use that reporting because it's awesome. I mean, Facebook knows so much information about everything about just the placement and demographic, it's huge to really be able to look at that and to be able to cut the fat. So
Yeah, the placement one's right there, which I think we're kind of keeping this kind of wide open for these
yep,
ones. There's no real trend that emerges here, but that is a really important one. Sometimes you'll see like $2 per lead on mobile and $12 on desktop. You're like, well, I'll create a brand new ad set only for mobile for that same audience, swap out my creatives, and so you're scaling and you're optimizing at the same time. So it's really, really powerful just from this little button. If you're not using that one, you're kind of you're not fully utilizing all the tools that Facebook has to offer you.
yep. And then I would say let's see. Yeah, let's get into number 5 actually. So let's get into number 5, and number 5 is I'll take the screen back. Let's see here, Keith.
Something people tend to forget to with the reporting tool is
Yep.
the conversion device, because you can get a lot of clicks and stuff sometimes on mobile, but if you don't check that, I had one campaign where we're getting all the clicks on mobile, but the conversions were actually coming in on desktop.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
you have to keep an eye open for that too.
Really, really good point. I mean,
Yeah.
that's something that, with the addition of larger devices now, it's becoming less of an issue, but it's still definitely something to look at. Like you might get all your leads, like Richard says, on mobile, but your sales, because they have to fill out a 12 form field or whatever it is, an Infusionsoft form, whatever it is, it's not super mobile friendly. All your conversions are coming on desktop. Like that's very common to see that. That's something that you'll pick up inside that breakdown button, without a doubt, as long as your pixels are all placed in the right spot.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we can touch on too, which is a bonus, which we'll hit on, is the objective, campaign objective, and bidding. But we don't want to go too much into that stuff. We've talked about it on other webinars. But let's actually hit number 5 here. So if I can hit play on that, darn it, on my screen, show my screen. All right. So basically, number 5 is to use different ad mediums. Okay, types of different ad types. So example like video ads, different types, lead generation ad, content amplification, etc., etc. One thing that I'm going to recommend you doing if you haven't already is go into the members area, and I just put a link in the chat, and go to step 6 here, which is designing your traffic and conversion machine. Okay, perpetual traffic, goodwill, leads, and customers. And watch this training. It's Bree, Betty Rocker, and I did this one together actually. I'm going to add the Lucid chart in here too, but that we used in this example. But basically, this is a huge thing. This is one of the biggest leverage points that you can do. And you got to think about this. Is one way I'm going to explain this is think about people. Facebook, we know, is like the online version of the party, right? Facebook is the party, but it's online. So a lot of times if you're at the right party, you've got the right audience, and you're showing up at the right party, there's going to be people there in that audience that are going to be ready to take action with you, right? The problem is a lot of times that there is people that are in different frames of mind, either throughout the day or just in general. They're more warmed up to you than they're not quite ready. Some people are more warmed up to you than other people. And also some people are more just ready to take the specific action than others. So for example, I've told this story a little bit before, but I'll shorten it up a little bit. So basically, let's say I'm at a party and I meet this guy. His name's John, and he's a financial advisor, right? And he specializes in helping parents save up their college tuition, right? College fund for their kids to pay for college. And I meet John and I start talking to him, and he is like, tells me what he does, and I tell him, hey, I've got a 7-year-old at home. I haven't started saving for college yet. I'm pretty interested in that. Tell me a little bit more about it. And he tells me about this 529 fund and how it's tax free. And there's also some other loopholes that most people don't know about with that you can use and you can leverage. Depending on your tax bracket and all this stuff. And he starts giving me these tips, and I'm super interested in it. And I'm like getting excited now, and I get to know the guy, and he gives me a great he sends me to, he gives me a URL to go check out an article that he wrote on his website, and I'm going to go do that. And I like the guy, and it's all good. And then I ended up just, hey, thanks a lot for the tip, dude. I get to know him a little bit, ask him about his family, and then I kind of take off and I go get a drink and I go talk to some other friends, right? For me, I might be in a situation where I go home and a couple days later, it's not a super urgent need for me. Maybe like Wednesday or Thursday that week, I might go check it out, go read the article. Maybe Monday or Tuesday, maybe I don't even read the article. I forget about it and I see a retargeting ad from him, an ad, and then I go and I check that out and maybe I opt in or something like that. However, let's say we're at the same party and as I'm talking to John, there's a couple behind me, and it's Trisha and Kevin, right? So Kevin and Trisha are married, and Trisha is kind of eavesdropping, and she hears him giving me these tips about raising this college fund for my son, and she's like bumping her husband. She's like, "Hey, Kevin, listen to this. Check this out." So she's like grabs him and pulls him over, and she starts kind of listening in, and we kind of look at her, and she's like, "Hey, do you mind if we kind of listen in?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure, no problem," right? So we talk, and he gives me the tips, and then I kind of take off, and I go get my drink, and so Trish grabs Kevin's arm, she just grabs him, pulls him over, and she kind of looks at him and kind of nudges at him, and like waiting for him to say something. And Kevin's like, "Hey, dude, John, that you sound like you know what you're talking about. We've got two kids, one's 10, one's 13, and kind of freaking out a little bit that we've got he's only 4 or 5 years away from college, and we don't have really anything saved up. So I'd really love to know more about it." And he's like, "Yeah, my website, here's what it is. This is what I gave Keith. Check it out." And then Kevin's like, "No, man, like I want to know, like, is there any way that we can like talk to you about this and learn more? Because we're kind of panicking a little bit." So he's like, "Yeah, you know what? I can set it if you want. Come into my office on Monday. I've got an opening at 2 o'clock. Text me your email, your phone number, and we'll set it up." And he does that, and it's done. Appointment made, right? Monday they come in and they end up becoming a client. So the situation there is we're all at the same party, right? You might be targeting one audience that has a lot of people in that audience, and there's always going to be some people that are ready to take action right now, and there's going to be some people that just are your target audience, but they're just not quite ready yet. So that's where different ad types really come in key. That's why we love the content amplification, spending maybe 20 to 30% of your budget on blog content or long form video ads. And then there's always going to be a percentage of those people that are ready to take action right now, which is why you always want to be focusing a good majority of your budget into lead gen or focusing on sales conversion. So different ad mediums, what that does is it gives you more ability to scale, because if you go back and we look at this targeting here, if I were to talk about my lowest hanging fruit, what's going to be my lowest hanging fruit inside my targeting? It's going to be my custom audiences, right? It's going to be my website visitors, my leads, existing leads, my Facebook fans, right? Like those are going to be my lowest hanging fruit. They're going to give me my lowest conversion costs. So when you're and this is what we talk about in that video, that training inside the members area. Here we talk about having this whole entire building this machine, and you don't have to start there. You definitely don't have to start there, but it's a great way to help you scale, because what happens is that you can have one ad campaign that's just continually taking people cold that aren't quite ready, and then it's moving them to your warm audiences. So your custom audiences, your website custom audiences are growing every day because you're forcing it to happen. Your fans are growing every day because you're running light campaigns, and your fans can get served up ads twice as often as non-fans. The frequency limit is 4 for fans and 2 for non-fans. So you want to be doing some of that. The other thing is video ads. So you might have somebody on your campaign, you're at, I might have an ad campaign where a typical kind of traditional image link post ad is doing great, but a video ad might resonate better with them. Might not resonate with everybody, but there's going to be a portion of that audience that will resonate with that. So one thing that we talk about here is when we say different ad mediums, like you might have the same target audience that is seeing a video ad, but is also seeing a lead gen ad, right? Because the reason why you can do that is right here. It's all about exclusions. So if I want to, let's say I want to exclude, let's see here, this, and I want to exclude this right here. So let's say I'm driving traffic to this webinar, right? Right here. No matter who I target, if I target Thrive Market, Whole Foods, Frank Kern, my website custom audience, warm traffic, I can exclude my leads. So I'm always excluding my leads. So if I have a campaign where I'm running video ads and I'm also running a lead gen ad or maybe a link post ad, I can run that ad to the same exact target audience. I can show Thrive Market, Whole Foods to the same basic ads because you're hitting people with different modalities. And what it is it's a great way to help you scale. It's basically, it's not adding more ads, it's actually adding another campaign. Now, do you need to add a ton of different of these layers off the bat? No, definitely not. So what you don't want to have happen is to get overwhelmed, to get overwhelmed. So, which is why I'm going to add that recording of the training I did yesterday. It's more of a beginners, but I know a lot of you on this call are some of you are beginners, some of you are advanced. So, and some of you are kind of right in the middle. So we're trying to kind of help everybody as much as we can here. But I hope does that make sense? I think I guess the one thing to do there, let me draw it out a little bit so it'll be easier to kind of understand without getting too confused. So let's pull up the Reflector app again. I think is it still on there? Oops. Nope, it's not. Okay, hold on. All right, so mirroring's on. All right, so there it is. It's just dragged down. So if you have let's pull this up again. Starting out, the first type of ad that you might start out with would be like a link post ad, right? A link post ad. That's going to be your most common ad that you see on Facebook. That's an image that's clickable. That's going to be your ad that you see. Okay, this right here would be like a video ad, even though it's Facebook Ads University, but it's not taking me to the home. So right here, that's a video ad. Okay, that's a great. How about that, Ralph?
I've seen that one.
I wonder. Let's see here. A lot of Facebook ads. Well, you know what? Let's just look over here. These are link post ads, right? Right column. So this is an image ad. You'll see a lot of these in the news feed, right? If you click on that image, it takes you to your landing page. That's the most common. That's where you're going to start, right? The next thing that I would start with, if you can do it, honestly, is a video ad. That's my next thing. And those two right there would be two. And then you could have those two ads running along with everything we just talked about, and that's going to help you in a ton of different ways. Okay. And what would your video ad go to? It would go to the same basically page, right? It's going to go to your landing page. This is going to go to your landing page. And they're going to go to the same landing page. This is going to resonate different with some people. Remember, the video ad might be more for people that aren't quite ready yet. So your video ad might be like for me. I'm the guy that like has a 7-year-old. I'm not quite ready for it, but I might see a video that's like, wow. By the time I get to the end of the video, I'm like ready to take action. And that's like what happens here with this ad right here that you're seeing with Frank is the leads he's getting from this video are the most profitable leads that he's ever had. They're buying the most. And this is a 12-minute video, okay? 12 minutes, 11 minutes, 45 seconds. And check this out. this is only 15 seconds of face to camera. The rest of it is just a presentation. So anybody can do that. It's just a great way to scale. We have lots of trainings inside Facebook Ads University on video ads. It's one of my favorite things to do. But adding content and those types of things you can do, but you don't need to add all of it at once. It's really all about doing one thing at a time. Starting with your kind of main link post ad, and then figuring out how can I add some more ad sets to that without risking too much. If I feel like it's too broad, then maybe I'll layer it up a little bit. The next thing I might do, maybe I'll try to create a video ad. Maybe I don't do videos yet, right? So maybe instead of doing a video ad, I might do a add to content, right? Or maybe it's a lead generation ad, which is a newer ad format, right? So maybe I'm doing a lead generation ad where they can opt in right on the news feed with mobile. Or maybe I don't want to do one of those. Maybe I'm doing a link post to content, to a blog, and I'm spending maybe 10, 15, 20% of my budget. So these are just ways to be warming more people up, those types of things. Maybe I test out a local awareness ad. There's lots of different things you can do, but basically keep it simple. Add one more type of ad. Maybe it's a different type of link post ad, completely different messaging, right? Maybe one is a short copy post and one is a long copy post. So let's say you don't do video, you're really only comfortable with link post ads. So I'm going to do link post long copy, and I'm going to do link post short copy, right? So your long copy is like really long, right? It's almost, maybe you have like a mini blog post because you don't have a blog. So you're using this long copy version to kind of, to resonate with people. If you got to really think about how can you get creative? How can you take like what these guys are teaching, Keith and Ralph and Richard and Jenny, and what are we teaching here and examples that we're showing, and like what assets do I have that I can kind of, it's all about how can you take somebody on Facebook, make them aware of the problem, and then educate them on why they need to be checking out a solution. Sometimes you can't do that overnight. You've got to have like a process and an email follow-up sequence, right? Or you have a 12-minute video that can kind of do that all in one sometimes. You might not get it right the first time, but so there's a lot of ways to scale on Facebook. But just the one thing to understand is to raise your budget slow, use your lookalike audiences, and then kind of try to think of other ways that you can resonate with people. Does that make sense? Those are the big things. So let's see here.
Yeah, I mean, you never know what's going to connect with your audience. I mean, it might just be a really ultra short link post ad. It might be a longer link post ad. It might be a video ad. It might be a carousel. I mean, you never really know. So when you're scaling out and when you're even doing some of the stuff, I see a couple of questions in the chat about that, is that we usually do swap out or change out our creatives just to keep things fresh. So a lot of people want to keep the same creative forever and ever, and even if they've got a million person audience and they've only got reach of 200,000 or maybe less, you should always swap out your creatives. You shouldn't let the same thing run over and over and over again. So always keep that in mind. And then while you're thinking about that, maybe you want to try a carousel ad. Maybe you want to try a video ad. Hit them with different modalities that you can, go after the same audience, but influence them in a different way, because they might be in a different spot depending on when they see you. Standing in line at Starbucks, scrolling through their news feed, whereas, maybe they're at home at night while their kids are doing homework and they're on their laptop. You never really know where they're going to be. Yeah, so you got to hit them in different spots, and it's not going to be like just one impression, one sale. You oftentimes do have to get a couple of impressions and a couple of things to, finally convince them to either give up their email address or their name, or maybe make a small purchase. So the more you can change out your ads. I mean, think about, if you're watching football on Sunday. I mean, think about all the insurance companies that have all the different ways in which they advertise to you. It's crazy.
It's not one thing. It's not. I mean, something might work for one campaign and totally not work for another one. So I think the most important thing is that you have to try it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, and the question is how often all the time, right? Do I change creatives? And that really, really depends on how wide your audience is, what your budget is, how big your audience is. But in a general rule of thumb, 1 to 3 weeks. We've seen some campaigns though where the same main creative has been running for a couple months and working. So in some cases, it is also all about your opportunity costs. I've got clients where they've got a couple campaigns where they haven't changed the creative in like 6 months. And the reason why is because they've got several layers of campaigns. They've got blog ads running and new blog posts coming out. So each campaign is a small budget with big audiences. So they don't have to rotate their content, their images all the time at all. And so I'm going to put this sometimes like 4 to 5 months, literally. I mean, because the reason why in this case where it's 4 to 5 months and it feels like set it and forget it is because they've got a lot of different layers. They've got several blog posts that are being amplified. They've got video ads, and each one of these are in like big audiences and fairly low budgets. So what happens is you're not burning through the same people, and that's another reason why I like number 5 is one of my favorite ways. It's sometimes the most difficult thing to do, but the more layers, when you start adding in, carousel ads and 2 different types of video ads and these different types of things, that's where you get next level. And you can scale more because you've got different creatives and you don't have to rotate out images every 2 weeks because you've got multiple types of modalities that are hitting people and they're all on smaller budgets, if that makes any sense. So there's different ways you can do this. It's all about like back to basics, right? Don't hit the same person over the head over and over with the same thing. It's not going to work. But if you slowly start to add a new ad and with a small budget, you'll start to have more kind of running. And that's where we kind of talk about that's why I want you to go watch that video that Bree and I did here. And this was, made a while ago. She's got a lot more layers on this, but she didn't start that way. She started with like 3, a light campaign, a content ad, and a lead gen ad, period. And now she's got like 9 levels going, but it didn't happen overnight and it didn't need to happen overnight. So, those are the things to start with. And a lot of different options for you there. But if you have a question and you're wondering like where should I start, come to the group and ask the question, But like I said, in order, use this. This is the order I would go in. Like I told you, this is one of my favorite things to do, and it's also one of the most difficult, right? So start with 1 and go down this list. Really, these are the 5. Go in this order. And this is gonna help. This is gonna be the best order to go into. This is why we made it in this order. And then you can start to making sure, just make sure you're using the right campaign objective. If you're trying to generate conversions, then use website conversions. Don't try to hack the Facebook algorithm. That usually will backfire. And then I guess the one other thing, Ralph, is that we really found out from Arjun last week was if you have an ad that's not getting impressions and you're starting to lose impressions and something's going on, you can't figure out why. Usually, like trying to hack the bid or changing the bid sometimes will help you if you change to clicks instead of impressions and stuff. That can help you, but in general, if your cost is higher than you want or you're losing impressions, it's more of a matter of the message and the creative or the targeting. He said that they've been adjusting the algorithm and they're going to be doing it even more over the next coming months to be focused more and more on user experience.
Yep. Totally. Yeah. If you're not getting impressions, you're doing something's off, something's amiss. You've got to either change up your creative, your ad copy, or your interest targeting, and that's a whole other can of worms. But basically, Facebook will give you the feedback to say whether or not your ad is resonating with your audience, and if it's not, you've got to change something up. So that came through loud and clear from him last week. That's for sure.
and they're adjusting it literally. Like they want every ad to improve the user experience. That's one of their missions of
Yeah.
Facebook. So they want positive messaging. It's what they want. So with that, I think we can sign her off, or we're going a little longer than normal. So let's we're gonna sign off right now. And if you have any questions on this, if you're wondering where to start, if you have a couple options, just bring it to the Facebook group and we'll answer it in there. Cool.
Yeah.
So all right, guys. Thanks, Ralph. Thanks, Richard. Much
Yeah.
appreciated. And we'll talk to you soon.
See ya.
Later.
See ya.
Bye.